So welcome to 22nd Century Management with Ken. In today's show, we're going to have a very interesting discussion with Dr. Karen. And just give you a little bit of her background, then we'll ask her to tell you do a better job of telling her story. Dr. McBride's executive coaching programs have produced a generation of exceptional leaders who have transformed industries using sustainability and innovation while maintaining a healthy work-life balance. So would you like to tell us a little more about your background, Dr. Karen?
Sure. I started my education in the field of corporate America, actually, and then, quickly moved into the educational space where I just realized that, leadership was a big part of life, and that, being leaders and being in C-suite positions myself, I realized that leadership was important. And so, my education is really tied around psychology and business, and I just merged the two together in how the CEO Institute was born. I have a doctorate in business administration. I have a doctorate in psychology, and that's just kind of how we came up with this amazing work that we're doing, and we're just changing lives.
Very nice. When we initially met, you had some interesting stories, some things that I think will be really helpful for the audience. So let me ask my first question for you is, you said you teach and speak about the new leadership language. So what is that new leadership language?
Absolutely. So, a colleague and I got together, and, there's tons of assessments out there in the world, right? The Myers-Briggs, and you got, strength finders, and you got DISC, and on and on and on. And those were all very focused on personality traits. And it was important for us to help leaders identify what we call their operational style, which equals their leadership language. And so we created this assessment to just peel back the issues of not just personality, but it really peeled back to how you show up, how we walk in the room. Like, we all walk in a room and do our own assessment. And we just kind of made that vivid. And we're teaching leaders just how to understand themselves in order to understand others, of course. And then that helps them better communicate, be more effective in their decision making, be more effective leaders in interaction, understanding diversity and leveraging diversity, of course, to be, again, better leaders. So that's really the crux of the leadership language. Is really our assessment is the base, and we teach them just understanding themselves.
Okay. All right. Very nice. And so how do you recommend people use and apply the language?
So many ways. It really is a tool that I encourage all leaders, people of all levels of leadership, to say, you know what, I really need to check me. We've talked a little bit about Kim emotional intelligence, right? And then understanding that our brains, first of all, 90% emotional. And so we have to understand where that emotion plays a part in our decision making, where that emotion plays a part in how we lead, where that emotion plays a part in how we interact with people. And once we understand the emotional intelligence part, that's kind of where the leadership language plays this extra step in saying, once I understand who I am, and if you and I are different people, right, Ken, and you may, in our leadership language, you may be a planner and I may be a doer. Well, we're going to have a different language. And if I don't understand your language, then we're going to disconnect somewhere along the line, if not a bad one, or at least semi-bad, or if not, probably a good interaction. But it's so important for us to understand who we're talking to just in leadership. A lot of times we think it's our way and we just move in that direction, when it's this question of leadership language is really ask you to check what is the way that would be the most effective way, not the right way or the wrong way, but the most effective way in communicating.
I think that is so true because I find that I have challenges sometimes communicating with people, but it's not that they're not listening and that I'm not speaking. It's just I think that what you're talking about is that disconnect, that a difference in the way of styles. A little bit of it reminds me of a discussion I had on a previous episode about introverts and extroverts and the difference in the way they process data and the way they communicate. And I think all of those are things that as managers and as leaders, when we're trying to motivate people, get them to go where we want them to go, or even more importantly, I should say, to get them to want to go where we want them to go.
Right.
Understanding the communication piece of it's really important.
Totally. Because that leads to strategic decision making, right? It leads to how we decide things, how we interact, our certain movements within our organizational structure, our culture. I mean, it really all connects. And so if we just had the understanding of the language, can you imagine? It's just like if I was to go to a different country and I would speak a language of that country, they would be quite welcoming to me, right? Because they were like, wow, she took the time to learn the language. Could you imagine if I took the time to understand your operational style, your leadership language, and then we can really speak on a different level, because you're like, she understands what I'm saying because nobody else is, but she somehow understands.
Okay, so now I have to tell this story, because you were talking about learning a little bit of their language and the impact. And this just illustrates that perfectly. I was in the military. I was in Okinawa, stationed there, and my wife and I were in a China store. And a couple of other military members walked in, and they walked up to the clerk, and the clerk was, I don't know, say they were busy, but they were doing something. Mm-hmm. And they started talking to that person. And it was really funny because they talked and that person didn't respond. So they talked slower and louder and slower and louder. And the person just stared at them.
Right.
You know, and finally they got frustrated and left. And that was where I came to understand the term ugly American, because I'm like, okay. And so I walked over and said, Ohio gozaimasu, which is good morning. And he says, oh, how can I help you? In English. Perfect English.
It is. It's amazing. It really is. And, you know, and us as human, we all have to remember we're human beings first. And, you know, especially in this very tumultuous times that we're dealing with between pandemics and race relations and so many other things, you know, if we just took a moment and really just kind of, so how are we processing things and not assuming that others are processing it the same way? That changes at least a perception about how we can communicate, a perception about how we can start shifting the divide, right? But we have to decide where we stand first. And, you know, our young people call it being woke. It's what we're talking about here, is like really understanding our awareness and being awake and aware of kind of how we're sensing, how we're receiving things, and then understanding that there's others on the other side or even next to us that are receiving it differently. And once we realize that, the leadership language conversation just can shift in so many good ways. And we help people apply it. We do, you know, because it's not something you're going to learn overnight, but we help leaders apply it and use it as a tool.
Okay, well, very nice. So that leads to my next question. So it doesn't seem difficult. So how do people get the tools to start doing this method of leadership, both professionally and personally?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you said personally, Kim, because it definitely changes personal lives. I've had some husbands send me some flowers because of the leadership language and the program that we teach and helping people understand others better. So it definitely has produced some rewards for me. And so how they can utilize the leadership language is that our website has the assessment on it. There's a cost because you get this extensive report on really understanding how you operate. And so we have them go online to our website, which is mkcircle.com. They take the assessment and then they get a time with me or one of our coaches to be able to help them walk through the tool and help them understand the tool and how to apply the tool. And then we have executive coaching programs where they actually can enroll, and we spend 12 months and we really apply it and we really help change leaders' lives. We really do. And we've had so many people advance because of utilizing this product, utilizing our tool. It's been amazing. I mean, we're in July and we count the amount of increases that we've helped provide within our program participants. And we're now at 201,000, whether that has been new jobs or advancements within their current roles of increase in funds. And that's not even talking about all the other things that we've helped them negotiate, but they're doing wonderful. We have some great stories about how utilizing this language has really changed the way they see themselves, but also how they see the others and how they work and how they become more effective in their leadership.
Okay, so maybe, and I didn't prepare you for this question. Sorry about that. But
Okay.
maybe you could relate a story of somebody. Obviously, we want to change the names to protect the innocent, or the not so innocent, maybe. But could you share a
Right.
story of how this has helped somebody?
Absolutely. So I had this individual who was in a director role, and his goal was to advance into a vice presidency. And he was already just kind of like that one level beyond below. And so when we met, of course, we did the operational style assessment. He got his leadership language, and we started having conversations around how to apply it, right? And to give you some just a little bit of caveats in between is that, so there's 4 quadrants of leadership language. So there is the quadrants of a planner, a thinker, a helper, or a doer. And they don't always really identify as how you hear those terms. So there's more to it, of course, but so we had to help him identify where he stood first. And so then we can find out where the bottlenecks were, how much of it was him and not just the business. Because, people come to us and they go, oh, my boss, this person, this, they go down the list of all the people that are stopping them from doing something. But then when we get down to it, we find out that a lot of it was just us not understanding who we were and understanding our language and how we were portraying and communicating to others. So long story short, we spent about a year together. And through that, he was what we would call kind of shifting the narrative. We were giving him strategies around how he shift the narrative, utilizing the language and the other tools that we provide in the program. So by month 12, I think we're at month 11. By month 11, he was promoted to the position of vice president, went up $70,000 in increase. And he is one of our true stories of showing that I utilized this. I applied what she's talking about. I took the time to apply this. And by doing that, it resulted in one of those awesome wins that we get often. And so he's an example. But it was really more, he found out that it was him more than it was everybody else around him. Because I said to him and I said to everyone, if we shift, people around us shift.
Oh, I think that is so true. It's kind of interesting because I taught my class this morning, and we were talking about. I gave them a task or a project to create a tool, or not a tool, let's say a program to get their technicians motivated to achieve something. But I really focused in the discussion, teaching them about how to think about from the owner's perspective. Because a lot of it is this, and I said, so if you want to spend some money to do something and you think it's a great idea, what you have to understand is that in the owner's mind or your manager's mind, there's always this question, what's in it for me? And so I said, when you learn to present your information and present it from the owner's viewpoint, so this is the program that I have in mind, this is what the cost would be, and here's what I expect the results to be, here are the risks, here are the benefits. And you go in and you present it to your owner with that kind of information, it not only significantly improves the probability that you will get to do what you want to do, but it also builds your credibility. Because rather than just saying, and it's interesting, I'll tell a little pre-story to that. I learned this. I had a mentor. I would go into this gentleman, I worked for him, and I would go into his office and I'd say, Tony, I think that we should do this. And he'd look at me and he'd start to ask me those basic questions.
Right.
And he taught me to put it in a proposal and bring it to him. And so I got to the point that what I would do is when I wanted him to do something, I would put it in not an elaborate proposal, but a proposal with the data. And I'd give him a little short summary on the cover page. Most of the time he'd go in and glance at the summary, sign it off, and give it to me. Because he knew by the time we had worked through that process and I got to that point, that I was thinking like he wanted me to think about it. And I thought about it like he would think about it. And so the end result is that he
got what he wanted.
Yeah. And that was what I was telling the class today is that what happens is you start to build credibility. You start to improve your odds. I use the term sit at the big table. Because if you're the only manager in the company that's doing that, and we were talking a little bit about building out a 5-year plan for the department, and to think about, okay, this is my business. What can I do to make my business better, more profitable, drive more revenue? And you go in and you can share that with the owner and say, this is what I see for our department for the next 5 years. There's budgets and all the little pieces that an owner would like in that. What's going to happen is when they need somebody to move up in the company, you're going to be at the top of the thought process because you've demonstrated you have this skill set. So that's a little bit.
And we call that, Ken, we call that shifting narratives, right? We call that shifting narratives and creating narratives that really support your growth. We all have to go out and get it, like you just described, and so the leadership language helps with that. And emotional intelligence helps with that. It's like, you got to decide that I want this. And then you start setting a narrative around what it is that you want. And like you said earlier, once you really understood the operational style and the leadership language of your boss, which to me sounds like he was a planner, once you shifted to that planner mode, whether you're a planner or not, but you knew that's what he needed, that shifted a relationship, right? That shifted a communication, that made things more effective. And so now you're moving in this direction. And I go like, wow. And so you're setting your narrative and you shifted an individual because you shifted.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I never thought about it from that perspective. But that's a perfect description of what happened. Yeah. And so, like I said, I'm really fascinated with this subject. I'm interested in leadership and management, and the one thing I'm convinced, and in fact we talked about this a little bit in class, is I think that too often leaders get to a comfort zone. And it was interesting. We had a term in the military. We called it retired on active duty, ROAD. And what would happen is they'd get to a point in their career where they reached their level of satisfaction, let's say, and had no ambition to go any higher. And they just kind of went, just kind of lazily paddled the canoe along. And I think, and I challenge them to not let that happen. I think that, and I would encourage everybody in our audience to be constantly, I'll borrow from Stephen Covey, sharpen the saw. Always work on developing, improving your skills. Work on learning and listening and developing new approaches to things. Because first of all, it keeps you interested and engaged in your job. Secondly, I think it puts you in a position to get promoted. And I think the third key piece of it is it's just good for your emotional well-being.
Totally. And mental health. I mean, honestly, it really is, yes, Covey calls it sharpening saw. We call it, now you hear the word pivot a lot. It really is about that pivot and understanding that you have to set your own trajectory plan. You have to always be focusing on going this way, right? We're not looking for this or this. We're looking for a trajectory going this way. And so create a trajectory plan, which includes a lot of the things that we're talking about today for leaders. I so believe, Ken, and this is why another reason why we created the leadership language operational style is because I do believe there's an epidemic in leadership, like bad leadership epidemic. I can't tell you. I mean, we work with a lot of corporate companies. We work with individual leaders. We work with, mid manager. We work with the C-suite managers. We work with small business owners. And I tell you, the one thing that I do hear more often, just in conversation, is that the leadership and how people are leading is really affecting the culture. It's really affecting individuals and people not wanting to be in an environment because of a certain way a leader is happening to be communicating, or how their employees are being felt, how they feel about their leadership. And so it's an epidemic of bad leadership that we have to continue to push and change. And so this was that key for us. And the beauty of it is that we have results to prove it, right? But it's so necessary. I mean, I tell people my goal is to create as many emotional intelligent leaders as I can in my time here on this earth. So that's my mission. That's my goal.
Well, I love it. And I love your attitude about it, because it's interesting. I retired. Well, I use the term retired really loosely 5 years ago now. And the one thing that in my time in dealing with service managers that I saw over and over again was somebody who would take somebody that they would be the best technician, and they'd walk up to him and say, "You're the service manager." They turn around and leave the poor guy to sink or swim.
Right.
And I saw guys come to hate their job. I saw guys leave companies. I saw this, and I am like, you know what? I can change that because I can give them the tool set they need because they have a tool full of things to fix a copier.
Right.
They have the knowledge and they have the tools to fix it. And I'm like, you know, if I can just get the message out and get people to attend the class, I can give them the tools to succeed in managing people. It's a different tool set.
Right.
And so I'm like you. I have a passion. I could have retired and stayed retired, but instead I was like, let me take what I've learned along the way and spread the wealth a little bit. You know, and I love it.
Absolutely. So that's what we do here at the CEO Institute. We are really focusing on that space. Like I said, we have programs for small business owners and entrepreneurs. We have programs for executive coaches for the executive levels, mid management levels. We really try to focus on all because we know all can utilize it, and it spills over into our personal lives, which is amazing because then you start seeing shifts in the personal lives, right? Like I said, I've gotten flowers from husbands, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a challenge as a husband that you face. And that brings up another book that I love. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Oh, yes. Great book. Very real book.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is I still find that, like my wife will start describing a problem and, this goes to your emotional intelligence. I immediately want to fix it. And all she wants to just talk about it. And, and so I'm very guilty of that. And I think that goes to your point is that the more aware we are of our styles and the way we do things in those challenges. And a lot of times now I catch myself wanting to fix it. I'm like, nope, just let her talk, let her explain what the issue is. And like I said, I still have lots of room to improve in that. But I think that is true. Like you were talking about in the corporate environment too, is understand, okay, maybe this person just wants to talk about it. They don't really want my help. And then maybe this person needs my help, but is too shy to ask about it.
Right.
You have all of these things that are going on in the world around you at work. And the more in tune and the better your understanding of that is, the better you're going to be as a leader.
The better you're going to be as a leader. And it's about intentional, right? And so that's what the tool, at least, it allows them to be more intentional because at least they can come quickly to mind about, okay, here's these 4 quadrants. Where does this person fit? So then I can help them, or I can be more, at least understand or hear what they're saying because they're coming from this perspective, instead of going straight into this is how I run the show and we're going to run it my way. People don't leave jobs. They leave bad bosses and bad culture.
Oh, I agree 100%. And I have, I have done that in the past, sometimes you leave uncertain bosses. You're not sure what's going to happen. I worked for a company as a technician, as a district service manager, and they announced that they were going to put the managing marketer in charge of the service team. And my experience with this individual in the past had been that he was really focused on marketing, but he didn't see a lot of value in my position. It caused me to change jobs. And in reality, I made a good decision because that they cut bodies and cut bodies and cut bodies because they didn't see the value in what was being done in that department. And so, like I said, you leave the boss, not the company usually.
Absolutely. And we help people with that too. Ken, that comes up often where, I think probably one of the words I hear the most when I'm interviewing clients for the program is that I just feel stuck. And, once we start peeling back that banana to get in the program, we start peeling back the banana of the stuck part. A lot of it is because we sometimes create a loyalty, and this is based off of your operational styles, but there's a loyalty that we create that really is something that is almost false, right? You can get caught in this space of loyalty and being loyal to an organization when there is no loyalty in return. And so we miss the whole point that it's time to shift out, and so there's so many times that we've helped people shift out of a culture or out of an organization just for the simple fact that it just doesn't connect. They've lost the purpose of what they were doing and they're not being fulfilled anymore. And so we have a lot of that, right, that comes through our doors. And again, they walk away just with a smile on their face, and they're now, whether they've decided to go entrepreneurial and start their own business, or whether they've gotten into another organization that definitely has the culture that fits for them. And it's a shift completely. And then again, now you're talking about home happy, work happy. That's that balance that we're always trying to create for people, is that work-life balance. So yes, it happens often where we hear that word, I'm just stuck and I don't know what to do. And then we really help them see where they, again, are kind of stagnating themselves, and then where they could shift within the organization or shift out.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that they get a lot of satisfaction after you've helped them. We should probably say goodbye to the audience. You and I could probably talk all day, because we both like to talk and like have some similar interests. So let's say goodbye to our audience. I'll ask you to stick around for just a second. There will be links in both in LinkedIn. If you're watching it on YouTube, there'll be links there. If you see it on my website, there'll be links there. All of them will help you get in contact with Dr. Karen and benefit from her tools and her information. Thanks for watching.
Ken, thank you.
Okay. We'll see everybody.